So I've seen and heard of the stories out of Denver, Colorado Springs, the last few years, an increase in crime. The state of Colorado has seen tremendous growth as a result, right? We've seen an increase in regulations, for example, with Costilla County. It is unfortunate that we do have criminal elements amongst us, that some people will ruin it for everybody, right? But we are hearing stories, right, of these problem children. We're going to talk tonight. I'm going to be reporting on this information out of Colorado Springs. Now, as I start here, I have only a little bit of experience in Colorado Springs. Visited the town back in 2012. Found it to be a little nitty gritty. It reminded me of the east side of Portland. For those of you who know Portland, that are watching out of Portland or used to live there, we're talking 82nd, we're talking 122nd, we're talking 181st and Gresham, like that nitty gritty gangbanger essay. Anything can happen, and I guess Colorado Springs wasn't necessarily like that. I don't think this is necessarily about Colorado Springs, but any town USA where, society goes through these periods in which, for whatever reason, and that's really another video, but I speculate on that too. Celestial influences, mind control. We'll touch on mind control tonight. But periods in which there is more rape, there is more robbery, there is more killing, and of course, more people going to the police. Well, what are the police going to do about it instead of really understanding what's happening with the inner psyche of these people? From like a deeper understanding of criminology, and patterns. So let's go ahead and read this. Anyone who doubts crime and violence are on the rise in Colorado Springs needs to read the Gazette or consume other sources of news. Since late September, there's been a spat of shootings and homicides. On the worst days, this place seems like the south side of Chicago. South side of Chicago. Recent shootings near Austin Bluffs Parkway and Barnes Road have dominated news cycles, but there's also been shootings at businesses near East Platte Avenue. And just Friday, a man was shot at the Colorado Springs Airport. So when I was there in 2012, I stayed with some friends, I think, in, what was the name of that town? But it was east of the Springs by about 45 miles. And so stayed there for a few weeks, but never stayed directly in the Springs, but traveled into the Springs. I even dated a girl really briefly that I met on Craigslist, believe it or not. And went to a few prepper groups, actually. So there's actually some videos of me visiting the Springs. And but just got a vibe that was not the place to hang out, and energetically. And I was actually there a few years ago and just felt that type of really down, really low energy. Really low energy. I just got to be honest. And maybe it's gone through a transition. Probably has. Like a lot of places in America. Portland, was a really good town at one time. It's always had its problems. People have always had their problems. Alcoholism, domestic violence, racial tensions, just unresolved issues and problems. We're humans. But, you hear about things like the golden years, where things were different, or like, songs like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Dun, dun, and they're always glad you came. To like, going to a club and it's like bum 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 down ba bum bum, and you got big old belt, yo, I'm gonna pat you down. like check out the modern day Portland ongoing social zombie apocalypse. Boom 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 boom. Like literally like gunshots in the actual songs. And then just all in the video games, mass media mind control. People becoming gangbangers in the military, coming back with real skills now, y'all. And just all the other insanity, Call of Duty, and all of this. And the mass shootings and for years and years. The video game arcades and the plastic gun. And I'm not here pitching some anti-gun argument. It's more about, and it's even deeper than I can even get into in this video, right? But there are periods in which people go off. And so I stay away from the Springs. Okay. The city has 26 homicides as of Friday. At this time last year, there's been 17 rape and robbery numbers are up from previous years. Law enforcement has had to deal with numerous traffic fatalities throughout the city. Colorado Springs is obviously no longer the quiet, peaceful, quaint little town at the base of Pikes Peak many residents remember. I got that feeling. I checked out Manitou Springs, and is it old Colorado City? It has an interesting vibe to it. It has some interesting restaurants, decent place to get gyros, and other food, but definitely was like, that scene in The Matrix where there's Neo and Morpheus. He was warning him about the woman in the red dress. Just, that little scene there. There's a few blocks there in the Springs. That's like that scene out of The Matrix. Growth has brought us new jobs, new opportunities, but also increased the prevalence of big city problems. Traffic noise and crowded shopping areas are the lesser issues. Crime is the big one. And he was charged with dealing with the increase in violent crimes. Our public safety officials have to handle the increased calls, the multiple unsolved investigations. Lost stories in general, Colorado, dead bodies in the forests, found remains, Costilla County, Huelfonano. I have a difficult time with some of these counties. Someone's going to be correcting me in the comment section. But county borderline over there, they just found more remains. So that is what is going on. The article concludes, we cannot afford to ignore what is happening in our still beautiful city. Drainage, infrastructure, and public safety are legitimate responsibilities of municipal governments. We must give City Hall what it needs to provide basic services. So I'm not going to get into a lot of other news, but, we can go over and look at Portland, Oregon, and then they have their homeless epidemic, and people just making the documentary Tent City, USA, what is to be done, and now we're going into winter, and things have just gotten worse, and they don't have solutions. It's about welfare and Section 8. There isn't really a connection with people living in freedom off the grid. That's not a mainstream, not in the mainstream consciousness. They want to demonize that, overregulate that. So the poor can't do that. Only the wealthy can afford to do that and be within regulation and code. So the world is changing. The world is changing. And a lot of people moved off the grid to get away from crime, gangs, and problems like this, right? So the future is a little alarming. We don't know, what type of world we're going to be in 10 years and 15 years. I want to show you something else. Okay. We can also see how, this is a person that's been arrested. Sometimes we see professionals losing their, whatever's going on. And I talk about the solar flares sometimes. People they've done studies on psychiatric admissions during geomagnetic storms when there's that magnetic flux. And I talked about that in a recent video. Well, we had some of that. Senator Rand Paul has several broken ribs or fractured ribs. Okay, this guy right here, his neighbor attacked him. Okay, Senator Rand Paul, that's right, son of Ron Paul, former presidential candidate, right? So even these people in power, right, that supposedly would be living somewhere that's safe. And so check this out and look at this douchebag, right? I don't know what happened, but I've read a few reports. It reads here, U.S. Senator Rand Paul has 5 rib fractures and lung concussions as a result of a apparent assault Friday by a neighbor at Paul's home in Bowling Green. Senior advisor Doug Stafford said Paul's injuries caused pain that could persist for weeks, perhaps even months, but that the Republican plans to return to the U.S. Senate soon. The arrest warrant in the case indicates that Paul told police that his neighbor came on his property and tackled him from behind, forcing him to the ground and causing pain. According to the warrant for Botcher's arrest, Paul had injuries to his face and had trouble breathing due to a rib injury. And as far as what they were actually arguing about, I'm skimming to the end here. In another article, I believe that it claimed that it had something to do with a dispute over landscaping. So whether it be someone in power, right, one ethnicity or another, it seems that there is conflict all over the world. Protect yourself out there. It's a crazy place. Yes, I moved to Colorado. This stuff's going on in the Springs. I try to stay rural and stay in these urban areas, but there really is no escape, right? As long as there's people, there's only areas where there's less people. There is no ultimate safe place. There's only safer places. And of course, living one day at a time. I'm Alex Ansary signing off.